Welcome back to the Elias Macko Show. Mitch Joel, you know him and love him as a tech investor, advisor, and author of Control Alt Delete. He's also the founder of ThinkersOne. And amazingly, he's here with us this morning because I would have thought by now that Mark Zuckerberg and Meta would have called him up and said, we want you to drop everything you're doing and come to us. We're going to give you $300 million. What are you doing here, Mitch? How come they haven't called for you out in Silicon Valley or wherever they're developing artificial intelligence?
Oh, I should have learned that third language called coding, Elias. I should have listened to my parents and gone to school.
But can I ask you your take before we get into the subject at hand? You've heard all these stories, right? So Meta, they're on an absolute hiring spree. They're calling people up and they're giving them limited time offers, meaning HR, the human resources people are calling up these AI developers. They're saying, I'm calling for Meta. I'm going to give you 1 hour to decide to come to Meta and work on AI, leave OpenAI, leave Apple, leave other companies, and we're going to give you $100 million or $300 million. I've heard one instance where the number is $1 billion to get one individual to leave their current job and go to Meta. What's your take on that poaching spree?
Well, one is we are hearing these stories, but we should also bring this a bit more down to reality. This isn't for necessarily everyone. And Meta's CTO has been saying that while there have been some massive packages, it's very select leadership. Typically, roles are more in the 1 to 1.5 million range. Nothing to cough at either, but still very, very real. And look, I think what we're seeing is, I have two analogies. One analogy is you can have a bit of finiteness when you're talking about things like hardware and data, but human capital is potentially limitless. And you really need this high level of skill to have both the skill and understanding of where it's going. So the other analogy that I think is more interesting is think about a sports team.
Yeah.
And sports teams do every year to ensure and lock in the best talent. And so we know CEO pay and all this executive pay is out of control in relation to us regular people sitting here on the radio. But if you have somebody with that level of talent, wouldn't they be compensated at least a delta to that of a professional athlete? And I think people like Mark Zuckerberg are starting to realize that if I can build an all-star team now, what would the investment be like? And then scale that in relation to, let's say, what an NBA or NHL team has in relation to a Meta or an Apple. And suddenly the coffers open up.
So are you saying some of the talent here, and again, it's not everyone, but some of the talent that is being poached, it really is akin to like when it's like Shohei Ohtani, the baseball player that can pitch and he can hit, and he got $750 million and there was bidding of multiple teams. It's akin to that. Like there are some AI talents that are so unique, so special, so rare that they now can command hundreds of millions of dollars.
Right. And this plays into the secondary thought of how long does that last in a world of what they call vibe coding and your ability to speak and pull this out. But look, we are in the Wild West moment of this with massive valuations and huge stock market prices and promises for tomorrow. And the talent pool is limited. Also, you're seeing things like, look at how many employees OpenAI has in actual development. You're seeing trillion-dollar valuations out of companies that have a couple hundred of employees or even a handful of employees and building a unicorn-based or multi-billion-dollar valuation.
Okay, so from there, I want to go to what they're building that could possibly require these large sum payments to so many people. So let's talk about ChatGPT Agent. And would you call this the next step on how, everyone can interact with AI in their daily lives?
I think it's bigger than a step. I think this is really a huge evolution as it becomes better. So like other components of this and other technologies, it's very early days. It seems very simplistic to many people who are more advanced. It can take sometimes 15, 20 minutes to an hour to perform the task. But overall, yes, this is the big promise. It's the ability to have a assistant technologically that can go out and not just look at things and give you a response, but actually do the work. It can create not only just the travel itinerary, but actually go and book the hotels and book the flights and do all of that in a way that is following your guidelines of maybe it's price, maybe it might be other things. It might even come back with multiple recommendations of I can do this or I can do that. So we are talking about this world that's taking us one step closer to having an army of what I'll call robots. Now they'll
Yeah.
be virtual, but soon they'll be probably physical too.
I'm still trying to figure out how we could ever possibly trust it. Okay. So, to trust an AI to book a vacation, even a weekend vacation. I'll give you a real world example for me, Mitch. So over the weekend, I went to Toronto, drove back and forth, right? We talked this morning, 8:40 on Ken Connors, right, with in for Andrew this week. And I asked my AI chatbot, okay, because when I was driving back home, I knew I'd be driving back home Sunday afternoon, okay? And on a whim, I said, oh, you know what would be great is on my charging stop, because I'm going to have to stop and charge once. I said, you know what? I'd be great if I could go to Costco as well on the way back. So I said to the chatbot, I say, along the 401 between Montreal and Toronto, where's the Tesla supercharger that is closest to the Costco? And it writes back, matter-of-factly, oh, having looked at blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. The answer is the Costco in Cornwall. And I'm like, oh, fantastic. I'll stop in Cornwall. Only one problem. There is no Costco in Cornwall. Right? There's not one there. It doesn't exist. And, I looked into it and I said, wait a minute, that doesn't, and I even asked the AI, I said, how did you get this so wrong? And it's coming up with some, dare I say, BS response. And it's just like a phantom made up fantasy. So I'm wondering, okay, ChatGPT agent, book me my 2-week trip in London. And, I'm going to end up in London, Ontario for crying out loud.
All of these are true. All of these are real. And for every instance we hear of this, we have other people who have done incredible things with the tools. So again, garbage in, garbage out. Not saying you gave it garbage in, Elias, at all. But
I was pretty clear.
Yeah, but it may not be its specialty, meaning when you have these tools that you're using, you are giving it a lot more information. You are creating guardrails for it. There are guardrails being put in by these organizations. I'm not going to be Pollyanna about this in its current state, but what I've seen in the demos and what I've seen in people who are using this tool, because it's only available to those who are paying more for the monthly subscription, is that it is a peek into what is clearly coming very fast. The other thing I'm going to drop on this is a lot of times we talk about this and it's a let's see. 6-7 months later, you and I are having conversations about this and it didn't work. This is this. Usually in this frame of artificial intelligence, you see this peak and then in a couple of months, you're kind of staggered at the advancements of it. If you look at things like video generation, things like that. So when I saw this, it felt like that. You're looking through a bit of a keyhole through maybe a pin needle, and that's going to be a quarter, and then it's going to be the size of and then it's going to get bigger.
But to use these tools, you have to basically give ChatGPT agent control over your computer and your accounts and that kind of stuff. What are the safeguards in place in order to protect us from, once you give ChatGPT the keys to the car, or in this instance, the keys to your laptop, that it doesn't go off the rails?
Yeah. So one is you definitely have ChatGPT or OpenAI in this case introducing what they call watch modes. They have confirmation checks at every level, especially for sensitive tasks. They're very sensitive to things like financial information. There are blocked sites. There are disabled memories by default. They are obviously looking at this and realizing that this could be completely out of control. And slowly they're going to probably open it up to see how this can unwind. But if you're saying at a primary level, are we entering into this phase where this technology will act as some type of, let's call it a virtual assistant for those who are struggling with the words agent? You are seeing that it is going to be very capable of doing that. And by the way, when I had assistants, it was always, I want to verify everything. Others have assistants where it's like, I want you to just do it for me. So also understand that when we say this, it's not an all you can eat buffet here. You could be very specific about, come back with just recommendations or suggestions. I mean, it's very open to interpretation, and also it's going to be very open to the reflection of the person.
I would make sure if it books anything, you can cancel it. That's what I mean, I'm just worried about an AI agent, and you say to the AI agent, hey, I'd like you to make sure that you remain aware of costs, and there's a budget, so make sure you're in the budget. And then it goes and books like everything that's non-refundable to save $2, and you end up with a bad time or something worse.
Watch your apostrophes. If you're going to St. John's or St. John, you want to watch your apostrophes there. Yeah.
I'm telling you, or it'll tell you, and it'll be adamant that St. John's actually has 3 apostrophes. It'll just be like,
And
nope,
a
that's what
Costco.
it is.
And a Costco.
And a Costco. Mitch, be well. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Elias.